Our next speaker is a true leader. Ronald Lauder, president of the World Jewish Congress, is constantly on the front lines fighting on behalf of Israel and the Jewish people. He traverses the globe advocating for Israel and the rights of Jews everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ronald Lauder, this year's Jerusalem Post Conference President.
Yaakov, thank you. Before I start, I'd like to wish all the fathers here happy Father's Day. And to please make more Jewish babies. Thank you all. It's a great pleasure to be back here with you today. But I want to thank the Jerusalem Post for creating this event. But more importantly, I want to thank the Post for its unwavering commitment to providing a clear and concise and honest view of everything going on in Israel, the Middle East, and the world. This is especially critical at this time when much of the world's media shows a distorted and outrageous bias against the world's only Jewish state. To its editors, its writers, and all the people at the Jerusalem Post, on behalf of all of us, thank you. Many of you know that as president of the World Jewish Congress, I spend most of my time traveling across the globe, meeting with world leaders, and bringing three messages. First, make sure Israel is safe and prosperous, and vote with Israel. Second, make sure the Jews in your country are safe and free to practice their religion. And whenever and wherever anti-Semitism comes up, stop it in its tracks. Stop it immediately. This past year has not been a good one. You know that. You've seen the increase of anti-Semitic attacks from the right and from the left. Jews are targeted again for being Jewish. If this is happening in 2019, after everything we've learned about the Holocaust, I think it's time that we change our tactics, and that is what I wanted to talk to you about today. First, I need to remind you of something. 83 years ago, the World Jewish Congress was created to warn the world of the growing threat coming out of Nazi Germany. Jewish leaders gathered in Geneva to send that message. But in 1936, they had no voice, they had very little power, and they had no access to world leaders. So they were ignored. And because they were ignored, the Jews of Europe were destroyed. I'm here today to remind you that things have changed since 1936. It's time for the Jewish people to act differently. It's time for the World Jewish Congress to act differently. And going forward, I will be as different as well. The World Jewish Congress has been mostly a political organization for the past 50 years. We've held conferences, we've spoken out, we've written op-eds, and all of this has had an impact. But frankly, words haven't stopped this new wave of hatred against our people. Words alone are not enough to change this. I have personally visited over 40 countries in the past 18 months. I've been with prime ministers and presidents in every country. And they tell me, you're right, they agree with me. But neo-Nazis are still marching. Things have to change. And to do this, we have to change. I've learned an important lesson earlier this year, of all places, Bulgaria. Since 2003, neo-Nazis in Sofia, Bulgaria have staged a march. They honored a Bulgarian Nazi from World War II by the name of Histro Lukov. It's exactly the kind of march you can imagine men in neo-Nazi uniforms with a raised hand salute, shouting anti-Semitic slurs against Jews. The government of Bulgaria could not stop it because of the free speech laws. But this year, the World Jewish Congress went to Sofia, and we helped organize a counter-march with many more people. Jews and non-Jews, good, decent people. Even the president of Bulgaria joined us. We all marched together. And guess what? The world saw that these neo-Nazis were nothing but a fringe group of anti-Semites, far outnumbered by many decent people of Bulgaria. What I'm trying to say is that's how you fight neo-Nazis. You don't allow them to control the streets. You don't let them define our story. You get into the streets. You get into them with men, women, even children of all faiths to show our unity and strength. This is not just a Jewish issue. When neo-Nazis march in Chemnitz, Germany, or in Sweden, or in any city in Europe, we will organize counter-marches. We will outnumber them with a good, decent people in those countries, people of all faiths. The Jews of the diaspora will stand up and defend ourselves, like Israel has always stood up to defend itself. We don't have an IDF like Israel, but we have people on our side who vastly outnumber these neo-Nazis. If a Jew is attacked in a synagogue, I want to see thousands of people in the streets, like we saw in Pittsburgh and Paris after attacks. Remember the constant demonstrations at the Soviet consulate on East 68th Street back in the 1970s. They were loud and they were unrelenting, and they helped free millions of Jews living in the former Soviet bloc. Remember, we're not the timid Jews of the 1930s. We have a voice and we intend to use that voice. I know many of you who went to college. Well, when your alma mater allows the endorsement of BDS, or as I call it, BS, or hires vicious anti-Israeli professors, or don't allow a pro-Zionist speaker on campus, stop sending them money. This is an absolute outrage, and you've got to treat it as such. There's not another country in the world that is singled out for this treatment on college campuses. The oh-so-concerned student activist expects no such reservations about a country which bans dissident or is corralling Muslims into camps, nor boycotts or divestments of sanctions are being urged against Iran from these campuses, a place which hangs homosexuals from cranes in public squares. Only Israel, a democracy and a perfect one, but one in which Arabs sit on courts and in the parliament, is singled out and shamed. These double standards are anti-Semitic, and they're dangerous. Call it what it is. I call it BS, but be vocal about it. Get organized, and pressure other alums to stop sending money. Call the college president directly and tell the president you will organize a boycott of alumni donations until they stop their anti-Israeli bias. Believe me, you will get their attention. This would never be tolerated if it is anti-Semitism against anti-black, anti-Muslim, anti-women, anti-gay. So why is everyone quiet when colleges and universities ignore this hatred of Jews? This ends now. And all of you have to help end it. Do not accept the fiction that criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic. Of course, legitimate criticism of Israeli policies should be welcome among everyone with a free exchange of ideas. But the unique standards that have been imposed upon Israel by the campus elite are anti-Semitic, holding Jews to a standard that's different from all others. It's the definition of anti-Semitism. Bottom line, you cannot be pro-Jewish if you oppose the existence of the only place on earth that is devoted to protecting Jewish life. I have been contacting university presidents. I have flown and met directly with every single European president and prime minister when neo-Nazis hold rallies. I met with the publishers of newspapers that show clear bias against Israel. But we cannot do this alone. We need the help of everyone in this room and every Jew throughout the diaspora. But we absolutely must do this as one people. And right now, we are not one people. This might be the most dangerous problem the Jewish people face today. Nobody wants to say it out loud. But the only way to fix it is to first acknowledge it. There has been a growing divide between Israeli Jews and the Jews of the diaspora over the past decade. And it's not going away. It's growing deeper. It's not solely Israel's fault, and it's not completely the fault of diaspora Jews. I'm not blaming the Orthodox or the conservative, the Reform or secular Jews. But this must end now for one simple reason. When Hezbollah or Hamas fire rockets into Israel, they don't care how religious the Jews are they're aiming at. They just want to kill Jews. When the shooter went into the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh, do you think he cared if someone was Shomer Shabbos? When the Nazis rounded up all the Jews in Europe, they didn't care who wore a kippah. So if our enemies don't care which synagogue we go to, why should we? We are one people, and we should start acting like one people. I don't care if you're Orthodox or secular. I don't care if you're Sephardic or Ashkenazi. I don't care if you're on the right or on the left. I don't care. If you are Jewish, I want you to be free, to be completely safe. I don't want ever a young boy to be threatened walking down the street because he's wearing a kippah. I don't want an older couple attacked coming out of synagogue. The Jews around the world must step up, and we must act as one. Here's where I think we should start. Israel, where 6.5 million Jews live, believe that the Jewish future lies there. But there are 8 million Jews in the diaspora, and the vast majority of them are Reform, conservative, or secular. And as Israel moves closer to Orthodox Judaism, many Jews in the diaspora believe there is no room for them. Both sides must compromise. The kotel is big enough for a portion to be set aside for mixed couples. If Jews want to be Jewish and they belong to Reform synagogue, they are no less Jewish than those who wear payas. At the same time, secular and Reform Jews in the diaspora must show a greater solidarity with Israel than to left-wing ideas. Believe me, Socialism won't save you from anti-Semitism, but Israel will. And we must all support that one Jewish state that we have. We've all seen the unsettling change in support from Israel in the Democratic Party. Democrats were once Israel's strongest supporters, beginning with Harry Truman in 1948. But today, polls show us that only 24% of Democrats side with Israel. When asked, who do you prefer, who do you feel closer to, Palestinians or Israel, and who do you believe with? 24% of Democrats said they side with Israel. At the same time, that same question was asked by Republicans, where there are many fewer Jews. You can put them all in this room. But frankly, when asked that question, 70% of Republicans said they side much more with Israel, with Jews than with Palestinians. However, most of the presidential candidates in the Democratic Party have seen these polls and have distanced themselves from Israel because they see the base of the party moving away from the Jewish state. How did this happen? When I was growing up, we cared about everything going on in Israel. We cried at their sorrows and we cheered at their victories. But young people today know very little about Israel's history in the diaspora. And we have to let that story be defined and told by people like us, not the people who hate us. This is where Jewish education comes in. Can you imagine the impact on Jewish life if there were 500 more Jewish schools throughout the diaspora, or 5,000 more Jewish schools? What that would be, these schools will teach our children the pride of being Jewish. I've asked that question because I've witnessed the answer myself. More than 30 years ago, when I served as U.S. Ambassador to Austria, I arrived in the middle of the Waldheim affair. For those of you who may be too young to remember, this was when Kurt Waldheim, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, left in shame, when it was revealed that he was not just a practicing lawyer, but he was a real Nazi. It was hidden during the time. But to show the entire world what they thought about it, the Austrians elected Waldheim president. When I arrived in Vienna as ambassador, I was the most assimilated Jew you could find. But Waldheim and the Austrians changed me. I always thank Waldheim and the Austrians for making me Jewish. They changed my life forever. They made me a committed Jew. One day, a Chabad rabbi in Vienna named Rabbi Biederman invited me to come to a kindergarten that he had started for children of Jews coming out of the Soviet Union. I think just to remember, this was the time that Jews were coming out of the Soviet Union, coming to Vienna. Some wanted to go to Israel, some wanted to go to the U.S. The ones who wanted to go to the U.S. were having problems. Ones that went to Israel went there, but a lot of them stayed. And their children were now in the major group in Vienna. And I looked at these children. I looked at their happy faces of this, when I went to this kindergarten. And I saw the happy faces. And they were all excited learning what it meant to be Jewish. Something that was denied to their parents and grandparents. Seeing these faces made a lasting impression on me. And I looked at myself and said, I could have been one of those children. Because of this, I started the Ronald Lauder Foundation and building Jewish schools in Eastern and Central Europe. I picked places where once there were great Jewish populations, decimated. They were decimated first by the Nazis, and then the communists came on and made sure there was fewer Jews. People said I was crazy. They're probably right. But to put my money there, they said there were no Jews left, and the money should go to Israel, where there are Jews. But guess what? When these schools opened, parents came out of hiding and wanted their children to have a Jewish education. Interesting, in many of these cities, non-Jewish children, particularly children of high government officials, enrolled also in these schools because of the best schools in those countries. Today, there are 30 Jewish schools in cities like Berlin, Cologne, Prague, Budapest, Moscow, Vienna, Athens, Rome, Sofia, Warsaw. We have a successful business school in Vienna, and we also have camps, one of them in Hungary. What we have is kids from 15 different countries coming together. They start off as 15 different groups. I've watched them, and after 2 weeks, they leave as one group. It's amazing to see the difference, these children. And it's interesting, we start off teaching them the holidays. We start off with Rosh Hashanah, we end through all the holidays. And I will tell you something else, because these schools, because of my schools, this past Passover, about 5,000 to 6,000 seders were done by these children as their parents sat there with tears in their eyes, because their parents never learned, and these children did the Seder, and frankly, asked themselves the question. Today, in these programs, we have something like 10,000 children. And many of these children, by the way, are the children of our first students 30 years ago. And right now, these communities starting to have real Jewish populations. It'll never be the same as it was in these various cities. But you know something? Today, on Friday night, the synagogues are filled. We are training rabbis all over, and they're going, and we have rabbis now in all these cities, and we have different congregations. It's something that I never thought I would see. And the president growing. I must tell you, to me, it means a lot. And I consider it, whatever I've done, the thing I'm most proud of. But I've learned something else. It's not important to teach them all the things of Judaism. It's important to teach them one thing, the pride of being Jewish. If you teach them the pride, it'll happen. Now, we also have something else I want to tell you. We cannot afford to lose one Jewish child. There just aren't enough of us. Our numbers are falling. We cannot afford to lose one. So as I finish, I want you to see a video that was made for the 30th anniversary of my foundation. I showed this film last year, but I want to tell you something else about it. Interesting enough, what I've seen, which is unique, I think, in the schools that are Reformed, conservative, some even secular, what do the kids do when they have their Orthodox friends? They come and they put a kippah on, and they say to them, "We're one people." Look at the faces of these children in what you'll see now. And many of the children are wearing kippahs who are not Orthodox, but they're doing it because they know we're one people. Thank you. Thank you, and God bless each and every one of you. I'm Israel Kai.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Lauder.